All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. On today's show, we're going to be recapping the games from Week 10 of the NFL. We're going to be doing my power rankings adjustments from the big, surprising result of Monday Night Football with the Niners taking down the Rams. And then lastly, we're going to get into the Patreon mailbag. We're also going to be talking about some MVP stuff as well. So a fun show ahead. I'm not going to cover every single game. There's a lot of games, just kind of looking back on it, I was like, you know what? I felt like I covered those teams pretty well in the power rankings. Maybe shorten up the show a little bit, which will allow me to get a head start on studs and duds for the week, so I maybe don't have to release that video on Saturday morning this week, which would be awesome. So let's go ahead and start the show. I do want to remind you that this show is brought to you by my amazing patrons on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can support the show, get access to exclusive content. I will be dropping my Week 11 NFL picks over on Patreon tomorrow. I just put up a Dak Prescott film breakdown as well, so you'll get exclusive content, and you'll get the ability to submit questions to this show, to the mailbag that we get into at the end of the show. So if you want that ultimate triple threat, you want to support this channel in the process, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. I really appreciate those that have supported me to this point and are considering doing it moving forward. Also, real quick, if you're buying tickets to concerts, I almost said movies. I don't think they do movies, but games, you name it, head over to SeatGeek, because that is where I buy my tickets. They have the best prices, the best interface, and use promo code FranchiseGuy, where you will save $20 on your first purchase. And again, support this show and this channel in the process. And that's all the plugs I have. Let's now talk some football for the rest of the show, starting with my power rankings adjustments from a stunning result on Monday Night Football, where the 49ers came out and just beat the crap out of the LA Rams that many people viewed as the number one team in football heading into Monday Night Football. And this was a really surprising outcome for me. For the Patreon gang out there that did watch my exclusive picks last week, I did actually pick the Rams to cover the spread and win this game. I really thought that the Niners, after last week, that was going to be a deflating, season-defining loss where they had no reason, no business losing to Colt McCoy and the Cardinals. We just saw the Panthers kick the crap out of that same team. So you have the Niners trending down, and then you have the Rams with all of this good energy, trading for Von Miller, getting into the lineup this week. Odell Beckham choosing the Rams over other teams. And then on Friday, Robert Woods tears his ACL, and they came out flat. And that was just a devastating night for the Rams for a lot of different reasons. So we'll revisit that a little bit. I do want to pull up the power rankings adjustments. I know many people curious what this means for the power rankings that I dropped on Tuesday morning, or on Monday morning, rather. But for the Niners, good news for them. They're going to jump up 3 spots, and even more notable, jumping a tier up into that cluster with teams like the Browns, the Colts, the Vikings, the Raiders, jumping ahead of their division rival Seahawks into those teams kind of scratching and clawing for wild card positioning, and teams that, just as we saw from the Niners, on a good night can really beat anyone in the NFL. It's just a matter of consistency. So the Niners, a huge win for team momentum, for Kyle Shanahan, for Jimmy Garoppolo, for all of those guys, and a big win for their playoff positioning as well, because the 6 and 7 seeds in the NFC currently completely up for grabs. So a huge night for the Niners. As for the Rams, they're going to be dropping down 4 spots. Now, you guys know I don't like to overreact to one game. This is now 2 games in a row where they have played really poor offensively. And I think it's definitely cause for concern. But the Rams are going to drop down 4 spots, still in the top tier. But I tell you, man, they have got to turn this thing around fast if they want to stay in that top tier. But they are going to get jumped by the Cardinals now at 2, the Cowboys at 3, the Bucs at 4, and the Bills now back into the top 5, where they were last week. So, yeah, man, as far as the Rams go, I think there was one real big note on this one, and that was the way Matthew Stafford played. Because you can look at any one game and point to a million different reasons of what went wrong and how much it means and all this stuff. But now for the second week in a row, Matthew Stafford has played, honestly, let's just say below average. And the belief, I think, is and was that this is a team that could go all in because they have a quarterback that they think is worth going all in for. And I think there's some serious questions on if Matthew Stafford is that level of a quarterback. Because when you think about it, if you mortgage the future and Tom Brady's your quarterback or Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback and that window is closing, you feel very good that you're going to get the quarterback play for 3 or 4 straight weeks that you're going to need to make a Super Bowl run, right? With Matthew Stafford now, I think he's shown enough times this year that you can make all the moves you want, but if he comes out and just doesn't have it that week, you may have just gone all in for nothing. And he could get hot and play that elite level Matt Stafford that we've seen in a couple games. He could get hot and give you 3 or 4 games of that. But I think there is some concern, that that's actually going to happen in January, because Matthew Stafford now 2 weeks in a row has been making really just stupid decisions. They're chucking the ball up in traffic or before he gets hit. Inaccurate. He was really inaccurate in this game. I know he was credited for like 6 or 7 drops, but a ton of those throws were just plays where the receivers had to slow down their route and flip around and try to catch the ball off balance. And again in this game, just bad throws into traffic. I would be very worried for the Rams that Matthew Stafford is going to play 3 or 4 straight consistent games, because really against the Niners here and against the Titans last week, he's a significant reason why they actually lost those games. So that's really upsetting for the Rams front office, for Sean McVay, for Rams fans, that this is a team that just traded 2 big picks for Von Miller. They don't have a first-round pick because they traded it for Matthew Stafford and all these other guys. Like these guys are all in on winning a Super Bowl this year. They can still do it. That's why I have them in the top tier. But I really look at Matthew Stafford and say, man, is this going to get them to that ultimate prize that they're really striving for? Or is this just going to lead to a really good season from them where they had better quarterback play than Jared Goff? I don't know. It was eye-opening to see that performance. And then for the Niners, man, this was a shut the hell up statement from Kyle Shanahan, who after that Cardinals game, I can't tell you how many questions I got throughout the week of like, do you fire Kyle Shanahan? That was like the number one question I got last week. And it just, I didn't like that. It didn't sit right with me. It didn't feel right. Number one, because I know how much respect the league and the 49ers have for Kyle Shanahan. I have so much respect for his play calling genius that totally showed up in this game against the Rams. I mean, look no further than that formation that he kept throwing out there with Elijah Mitchell out there at tight end, where he would motion him pre-snap and basically confuse the defense, but with Debo in at running back, the defense is like, oh, they won't hand it off to Debo, and he did. And then they ran that play again, and the defense was like, they wouldn't give the ball to Debo twice. I mean, look, their running back's in motion from tight end. They've got to be doing something with him. It moves the defense. Debo gets a clean lane again. And they change just the most subtle things with their pre-snap motion just to consistently fool the defense. And it was a reminder of Kyle Shanahan's genius and throughout the night, just pulling all the right levers. But on top of that, I don't think it was ever in question that Shanahan is or is not still an offensive guru. I think the real questions with Shanahan was the the head coaching aspect of the team. Does he have the right culture established? Can he get the team on the same page and all that stuff? And this was a super impressive coaching performance and an impressive week from Kyle Shanahan, because they had every reason in the world, and we see this from teams all the time, to basically be demoralized and come out and play flat after they embarrassed themselves against the Cardinals last week, against Colt McCoy in a game that they were supposed to win. They had a long week, but they came out prepared. They executed the simple stuff. They took care of the football, which they weren't able to do against the Cardinals. They run blocked. Just such a big night for the Niners and for Kyle Shanahan to kind of get back on track. And I look at the Niners, since Jimmy Garoppolo got healthy, since George Kittle has re-entered the lineup, and Kittle wasn't in there in that Bears game 3 weeks ago, but 2 of the last 3 weeks, they have ran the ball extremely well. Their play calling has been phenomenal. Their blocking has been elite, and Jimmy Garoppolo has actually played above average play at quarterback. The Cardinals game, they still were moving the ball, but they were fumbling the crap out of the thing, and it made their offensive day look worse than it actually was. So I do think the Niners offensively have clicked back into gear, and I think you're seeing why Shanahan wants Jimmy G in there. All of the stuff that he's able to do pre-snap and all of the quick little point guard stuff that he does with his quick releases and just kind of that field general point guard style quarterback, he's doing a good job of it. And I don't think Jimmy gets enough credit for just being a solid NFL starter. People constantly attack Jimmy Garoppolo and they're like, he's Case Keenum, or, he's a backup. Like, nobody wants Jimmy. I don't view Jimmy Garoppolo that way. The Niners are going to be competing now for that 6 and 7 seed. It's not going to be easy, but I think they have a very solid chance of doing that. And this is a team that could play spoiler in the playoffs. So it's just a huge week for the Niners, a really disappointing week for the Rams. And it was one of the bigger, talking points on the week as we now transition to talking about the rest of these games. But I do want to talk about one thing before we get into some of the game rewinds here, and that's the MVP race, which is just a huge talking point every year. And this year it's like unlike any year with the MVP race that I can remember, in that no one wants to win the damn thing. Every time you think this quarterback is going to win the MVP, he goes out and lays a stinker. It's been so consistent this year. Lamar, Brady, Stafford. Now, Kyler hasn't really had a stinker, but he got hurt as soon as he was the MVP. The one guy that hasn't really laid a stinker was Dak Prescott, but he also missed a game. And that's not entirely true. He did lay a stinker against the Broncos, although it wasn't the same level stinker as some of these other guys. But it's just been so wild that every week it's a new guy. And it's become a very heavy talking point throughout all of the NFL circles, is who the hell's going to win MVP this year? So I just wanted to list my current MVP rankings right now, and they're going to change very rapidly, as we've seen this year. But as we sit here today, I'm actually going to say Dak Prescott is the front runner for MVP at the moment. Yes, he's missed one game and he had one down game against the Broncos, but I think if you just line up all of his games, he hasn't had that atrocious performance. He's producing at a high level. His team is incredible from a win-loss record perspective. And just his play on the field is elevating these guys. Now, I've left Dak out of the top of this list because I do think he has the easiest job in the NFL right now as a quarterback. But he is playing the best quarterback in the NFL right now on one of the best teams, and that is typically the MVP of the season. I don't know if Dak is genuinely the most valuable quarterback or the most valuable player, but if I'm talking about who is the front runner to actually win the award, I do think Dak is the front runner right now. And like I said, I just did a film breakdown on Dak from that Patriots game, and he was genuinely dominant in that game. Dare I say elite in that game. So he is doing a lot of stuff as far as pocket manipulation, having that elite understanding of his progressions and having the timing aspect with where his receivers are going to be. He is doing some very high level quarterback play stuff. Now after Dak, and this race is itty bitty bitty, marginally thin, right? Like you could throw a dart and any of these guys could be MVP right now. Number 2 for me, with time to let that Thursday Night Football performance kind of wear off, recency bias is always going to creep into any of our heads. I do still think Lamar Jackson would be second. He has had, I would say, the most MVP moments as far as elite level performances where you look at and say there is no chance in hell that his team wins that game without Lamar basically putting the team on his back. I think when you look at the pass protection he has, the play calling that they run, the kind of lack of defensive support that they've had for the majority of the season. And I do think his receivers are good, but they're not what Dallas has. They're not what Arizona has. They're not what Tampa Bay has, for example. Good receiving core this year, but it's certainly not some of these other candidates. So I still think Lamar is right in there, but with the recency kind of effect of that Dolphins game and seeing him look as bad as he did, I do think that takes him out of the front runner. And then the one guy that I think has been the definition of an MVP is Kyler Murray. It just sucks that he got hurt because he's now missed 2 games, and the last time we saw him, he lost on Thursday Night Football against the Packers. So it's just been so long that we remember Kyler doing the spectacular. I think if he misses another game, I think that kind of disqualifies you. It's just tough to make a case for MVP when you're missing 3 games. It's just really difficult. But yes, they have great receivers, but just his play on the field is so spectacular. He creates so much that isn't there. And, outside of DeAndre Hopkins, I don't look at those receivers and say oh my God, they're amazing. I think AJ Green was trash last year. And when I see AJ Green, it's not like he's doing anything amazing. I think Kyler is using his 6'4" frame and ball skills and elevating AJ Green. Christian Kirk, he's fine. He's not some unbelievable receiver. So yes, Kyler has a good core, but I do think they're elevated significantly by what Kyler Murray has done. Now the thing with Kyler is the injuries. So he's got to get healthy and he can get back on track for this thing. And then 4th, I have Tom Brady, who just from a just statistical standpoint has really good passing numbers, and the Bucs are going to be at the top of the standings at the end of the year. So he's going to be in the mix for who is going to be considered for this award. And then Matthew Stafford, I still think is 5th. I know you've got the recency bias in there, but his stats are still really good looking. And, I don't spend a lot of time talking about stats, but that really is how this award goes. I mean, look at Matt Ryan in 2016 won it because his stats were a little bit better than Aaron Rodgers, and his team won more games than Aaron Rodgers. It's just how it goes. So that's my top 5 for the MVP, and it's gonna change very rapidly as we move forward. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but to me, those are the guys kind of leading the race at the moment. So I have 6 games that I want to reflect upon. And then the other games that I don't talk about in this show, I think I addressed my feelings on these teams and these games in the power rankings. And just watching them back, I didn't feel the need to cover them all that much in this show. I wanted to save a little extra time this week to get ahead on studs and duds. So I'm sorry if you're really bummed that I'm not covering every game. I just wanted to talk about the games that kind of caught my attention or stood out to me. So the next game I want to talk about is Kansas City at the Las Vegas Raiders, which was the Chiefs kind of with a statement. Not kind of, totally a statement on Sunday Night Football. And, I've been, I suppose, higher on the Chiefs ever since I was lower on the Chiefs heading into the season. If you remember, I ranked them third coming into the year because I was like, well, their defense isn't that good. And, Mahomes does turn the ball over a lot. I don't love a lot of the moves they made on the offensive line. And people are like, you're such an idiot, Chiefs hater. How do you not have them 1 or 2? And then basically like 2 weeks after that, I was all of a sudden defending the Chiefs all the time saying, well, it's, a lot of bad turnover luck. Mahomes is still incredible. I think the defense can turn some things around. It's just funny how things go in the NFL. But this is kind of what I've been expecting the Chiefs to get back to at a certain point. And that puts them right back into the Super Bowl mix. And there's not a whole lot to really say about why it happened or how it happened. I think they're just kind of back. Like, the defense has been playing better lately, and Mahomes in this game kind of got that energy back where he was making those great throws down the field, seeing things develop before they were there. Just like that elite level quarterback that we know Patrick Mahomes is capable of. And you bring that trump card into the playoffs, nobody wants to play the damn Chiefs. And they're back on top of the AFC West. They're probably going to have a home playoff game. Hell, they could still compete for a first-round bye because the AFC is such a disaster right now. So the Chiefs are kind of back. I'm not terribly surprised by it, but it certainly was good to see. And then for the Raiders, this was kind of tragic because they have really fallen off a cliff. And at this point, I do just feel bad for Raiders fans because they had something pretty special going. Gruden was doing a great job coaching. Henry Ruggs was totally breaking out as this elite vertical presence that just opened up the offense. And it opened up Derek Carr and the confidence that he was playing with. And now the coach is gone. Henry Ruggs is gone. Everyone, I think, is just kind of looking around at each other, looking for a pick-me-up, and it's just not happening. And you're seeing it reflect on the defense. They're not bringing that same energy and FU mentality that they had to start the season. And it's troublesome for the Raiders to the point where, like, I don't know how many more games they're going to win moving forward. Now, I haven't looked at their schedule. They could have some cakewalk games. But really, this is a very flat, uninspired, and dare I say, untalented team right now that doesn't have an NFL coach running the show. It's been tragic for the Raiders, and this, I think, was maybe the start of the end of their season for Las Vegas, especially when you look at how many AFC playoff teams they're going to have to get ahead of. And it's just a reminder that, Derek Carr is not the type of quarterback that's going to just take you from hard times and dig you out back into glory. And I think we're seeing that come to fruition. So a rough night for the Raiders, great night for the Chiefs. Our next game is Cleveland at New England, which was fun to watch back because this was a game I went in and, saw the Twitter reactions where like, oh my God, Mac Jones is the offensive player of the year. And oh my God, Baker is absolutely trash. And I watched this back and I'm like, I don't know. Those weren't my reactions from watching this game. I don't know. Mac Jones in this game was good. He kind of had that Alex Smithian performance. Everyone kind of saw the one highlight of him dropping a dime to Kendrick Bourne in double coverage in the red zone where he kind of put it where only Bourne could get it. It was a beautiful, big-time throw. But the rest of the game was really... The story of the game should have been Patriots defense and really Josh McDaniels with a great day, kind of calling screens when they needed screens, calling end-arounds when they needed end-arounds. The run game was electric, and the Patriots offensive line having their 5 starters in there with the return of Trent Brown now. This was just such an elite team win and a just domination by the Patriots on all fronts. It really wasn't Mac Jones coming out like winning, like taking the offensive player of the year crown from Jamar Chase. I think other than the one throw, he was good. He did what he did his job. He didn't make mistakes. He was accurate. He was decisive. He was solid. He looked like I keep saying and said coming out, 5-year vet, Mac Jones, good NFL starting caliber quarterback. Looked that in this game. But for the Patriots, man, they are This to me was their statement of like they can win a Super Bowl this year because they can win the AFC. The AFC is not good this year, and we've seen similar Patriots teams go on deep playoff runs in much better, more difficult surrounding teams, basically. Like, you look around, they just beat the Browns, they just beat the Chargers. Those are two teams kind of in that mix. I think they can beat the Bills because I think they match up incredibly well with their ability at the line of scrimmage to kind of keep Josh Allen off the field. And then the Chiefs, same thing. I think the Chiefs are a little more squishy, whereas the Patriots have this elite line play. I mean, the Titans, I think they absolutely can beat the Titans because I think they can slow down the Titans' offense very well. They can absolutely win a Super Bowl with how well they're constructed. And this is Bill Belichick emerging as a Coach of the Year candidate. I mean, the Saints now have fallen off, unfortunately, due to the Jameis injury. And I think that's opened the door for Bill Belichick to get into this conversation. I mean, it's been a really impressive year by the Patriots, and it's taken a little bit of time for them to get to this point, but that's pretty standard for Belichick. He's had a lot of seasons where the Patriots start slow and, September's not their best month, but then figures out the defense, where their strengths are, really leans into those strengths, and go get them. So it's been really fun to see that without Tom Brady in there, because everyone's been saying, like, oh, they're nothing without Tom Brady. No, they just need a little bit more roster talent. Belichick needed to get back into his rhythm and lean into the talented players that he has now. And they're right in the mix. So it was a huge team win for the Patriots. They've had multiple of them in the last few weeks. And then for the Browns, kind of the opposite of what we said with Mac Jones, in that everyone was like, oh my God, Baker was complete trash. And, there's a lot of videos going around of like, they can't pay him and all this stuff, like he's trash, they got to get him out of there. And I watched that game, I'm like, this is the second time this year where obviously Baker didn't play great, but he didn't have anywhere to go with the football. It was a really high difficulty outing for Baker. And he had the one really bad interception. I have no idea what he was looking at. It was one really bad play. And then the rest of the game, I really just didn't feel like he had a lot of opportunities, and he's playing injured. I'm not some Baker Mayfield apologist. And honestly, he's starting to play more and more like the quarterback I thought he was coming out, where I just never thought he was going to be a high-end starter. But I also think that there's a lot on his plate, a lot on his shoulders right now, and a lot of it's unfair, honestly. So, no, Baker's not a great quarterback. He's not having a good season, but it's just pretty emblematic of NFL fans to just go straight at the quarterback. And I'm like, no, I mean, they need to get receivers open much better. The defense needs to start playing better. Players need to stop dropping balls and fumbling, and the pass protection needs to be better on traditional dropbacks. So it's not just Baker's fault here, but the reality of the situation is the Browns have a ton to figure out, and they're starting to be more like that Cleveland Browns team that we've grown to get used to, where they just don't ever put it all together, and that's really what we're seeing here. The week-to-week consistency is non-existent. You're not getting a lot of players stepping up and elevating. It's just really disheartening. And I thought Kevin Stefanski was going to be the coach that built off their success last year and started to get that team identity together. And right now, after this game and the last month, man, it sucks for Cleveland. It really does. Nothing's working, except for Myles Garrett, who's unbelievable. If the Browns had a better record, I probably would have mentioned Myles Garrett for the MVP race. But then we have Seattle at Green Bay. What a weird game. What a just weird game. Not necessarily the outcome. I did think Green Bay would cover the spread here, but the way this game played out, so much to kind of reflect upon here. Let's start with the Seahawks, I suppose. I was impressed with the Seahawks defense. I think the pass rush and their coverage unit played a really good game, and that's a credit to Pete Carroll and those guys for stepping up on that side of the ball. But Russell Wilson, man, that was horrific. I'm trying to be slow with this take, but was that the worst quarterback performance of anybody this season? I really think it was. And I'm not trying to say I'm out on Russ or trash Russ or anything, because I do think he bounces back. But if that's a trend for Russell Wilson, that's a huge problem for the Seahawks. But again, he had the finger injury and didn't have a lot of time with the team. He was rushing back. There's plenty of reasons to just rule this one out and say it was a bad day at the office. Totally. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. But seriously, he looked like a rookie quarterback out there with no idea what he was doing. There was no play in rhythm, missing reads, missing throws, and forcing balls into dangerous situations. It was just a bad, terribly bad performance at quarterback. And that's really all I'm going to say, because we know Russ is an elite quarterback, or at least has shown to be an elite quarterback. But what the hell was that? That was just an unacceptable quarterback performance. They would have been much better off with Geno Smith in that game. So, you hope now that his finger is more rehabbed, you can spend more time in the film, spend more time practicing with his teammates. Whatever. I'm not trying to just shred Russell Wilson. I'm just calling a spade here. That was bad. And he's got to play better. And if he doesn't, Seattle should absolutely be considering, has Russ kind of fallen off, and should we move on from him? What does that mean for Pete Carroll? This is in a weird, bridge state where I could see them, self-correcting and being just fine moving forward with Russ. But I could see, if he continues to play like that, this could get into, blow-up rebuild territory for Seattle. It's fascinating. As for Green Bay, yes, Russ played terrible, but a lot of that was forced mistakes. And Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator, has turned into a really great hire. And I was hesitant at first because against the Saints, they got completely outcoached, and it looked like they had no idea. But that was the first game in a new scheme. They have totally understood, each player has begun to understand their responsibilities in these quarters coverages. You're seeing Devondre Campbell just dominate over the middle of the field, that linebacker position. The pass rush, the front four is what it is, but schematically speaking, they're great players and playing at a super high level, but that's not so much the point I'm trying to make. You're seeing the shell that they're putting over teams. They're not blowing assignments. They're playing fast and physical and gaining confidence. Darnell Savage has been incredible the last couple of weeks. To see a guy with his physical traits click with scheme and the mental side of the game has been really dangerous for this defense. You've got Adrian Amos playing in the peak of his powers. All these guys are hybrid and can move around with quarters and can drop into a six shell. You can run inverted coverages. They can disguise stuff to confuse a player like Russell Wilson. And all at the same time, they keep a shell over the top. And they force you to throw the ball underneath, where Devondre Campbell is flying around, Amos is flying around, even Kevin King, Rasul Douglas. They have started to fly down and prevent run after catch, which was that huge problem in the Saints game. So this Packers defense is all coming together. And then, their front four is incredible. Kenny Clark perpetually doesn't get enough credit. Rashawn Gary, still no one wants to talk about Rashawn Gary because no one liked him coming out, but he's been one of the best edge players in the league. They do lose Whitney Merciless for the season in this game. He's actually been really good the last few weeks, but hopefully going to be getting Zadarius Smith in there. This Packers defense dominated in this game. They've dominated now 3 weeks in a row and beyond that, but they played Kyler Murray, played Patrick Mahomes, and they played Russell Wilson in this game and really, forced them all to have some of their worst games on the season. In Russ's case, absolutely his worst game. So you surround now Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be back at practice this week with David Bakhtiari coming back. I don't think anybody in their right mind has worries about the Packers offense at least playing like a very good unit. You surround that with the defense that's playing like maybe the best defense in the NFL right now. And that's what makes, to me, the Packers the best team in football right now. And as long as they don't fall apart defensively in the playoffs like they like to do, there's no reason that the last dance can't have a happy ending in Green Bay, or that Aaron actually enjoys it now and sticks around. But big game for Green Bay, good team win to do it with defense, which you just don't see a lot from Packers teams. And the Seahawks are at a weird point where they got to turn this thing around fast, or it could be nearing the end of a regime for Seattle. Okay, Atlanta at Dallas. Not a lot to say other than this was an absolute beatdown. I just want to give Dallas their credit. Bounce back week. Dak, phenomenal. CeeDee Lamb, like an elite wide receiver performance. He does everything so well. Route runner, run after catch. He's got speed to be a vertical threat, to create underneath, ball skills. CeeDee Lamb is very quickly emerging as not just the best receiver on the Cowboys, but one of the best receivers in the NFL. They get Michael Gallup back this week. Cooper's like a role player on this team. And then defensively, like Micah Parsons, what an addition he's been. They're just a dominant football team right now. And they're totally in the Super Bowl picture. As for Atlanta, God, they just have so much work to do across the board. Like, line play, bad. Matt Ryan, so bad. Kyle Pitts, just they got him going a little bit this week, but he just hasn't been that game changer that they hope for on a consistent level, which, man, that makes it week by week. It just looks like a worse and worse decision. As Matt Ryan now, 2 of the last 3 weeks has just been atrocious. Like, what Atlanta fans wouldn't rather have Justin Fields, sitting on the bench right now? Justin Fields sitting on the bench right now, as opposed to Kyle Pitts. I don't know if there's a lot of Atlanta fans that would want that. I guess they were right about Julio Jones maybe not being able to stay healthy, but God, what do you do if you're Atlanta? You have a new coach, you have no quarterback for the future, and even right now, like, Matt Ryan is dead smack in the middle of the league. And then they have just holes across this roster everywhere. They need another receiver. They need defense across the board. Their pass rush sucks. So much work to do and not a lot of time. I just don't know what else to say about Atlanta other than they are totally stuck in purgatory. But this was much more about Dallas reestablishing themselves and the talent that they have to be a legit Super Bowl contender. This game is over in the second quarter. Then we have Carolina at Arizona. This is what we thought a Colt McCoy offense was going to look like, and Carolina's defense made that come out. Carolina is just a team I wanted to talk about. Arizona, it is what it is. You have a backup quarterback in there, you lose a game. There's nothing really to take away from that. But for Carolina, this was kind of a rebirth to their season because it's official. Like, this Panthers defense is super legit. At worst, they're a top 10 group, but they fly around. They have a pass rush. They have linebackers that can make plays. They have like 7 different defensive backs that have played solid or better. And then now adding Cam Newton to the offense that's been a train wreck the last 6 weeks, it adds a newly acquired floor to their offense. I don't think normally you'd be all that excited about Cam Newton anywhere else but Carolina. Like, you have the nostalgic factor. And most of you guys know I'm not big on Cam Newton and what he can bring to the table now in 2021. I think his arm is incredibly shot. But Cam Newton still has a place in the NFL in kind of that Alex Smith role, in a kind of revised Alex Smith role, in that he can elevate the floor of the offense because He's got a ton of experience. He's really good at reading coverages. He can get rid of the ball and be that kind of quick surgeon type of passer. You sprinkle in what he does as a runner. And again, that just gives you a better floor than what you had with Darnold and PJ Walker. And you can actually exist in the NFL with a high floor offense if you play elite defense. Now, the NFC is really tough. I don't think they can make a Super Bowl run or anything. But if they can get into the playoffs, that's still like a success for their season. They still have a ton of work to do as far as fixing the offensive line, getting a long-term answer at quarterback. But just for team morale and culture, I still think that would be considered a success on their season if they can win 9 games and get the 6 or 7 seed. And then they would get blown out by whoever they play, most likely, in the first round of the playoffs. But it adds a new interest. And this narrative of Cam coming home to make that happen, like, how can you not get excited about that? I mean, the nostalgic factor there is off the charts. And I am excited to watch the Panthers moving forward. And then the last game that kind of stood out to me was the Eagles at the Denver Broncos. So, another, like, Denver, nothing to add there. Very similar to Atlanta, like, stuck in purgatory. You just traded away Von Miller. You have no quarterback for the future. Decent team, but just no week-to-week consistency. Whatever. Philadelphia, on the other hand, is super fascinating. Team with 3 first-round picks, a coach that no one really believed in, that's coaching pretty well right now, a quarterback that's, I think, slowly establishing himself as a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. I have serious doubts about Jalen Hurts' upside. I'll talk about that in a second. You have young pieces stepping up, guys like Jordan Mailata, who has emerged as a franchise left tackle, who is now a bargain for that team. You have Devonta Smith, which was quietly one of the best moves of the offseason to get a potential top 10 pick from the Miami Dolphins to trade down and draft Devonta Smith, who's a better receiver than the Dolphins traded up to take. Like, what? What a... Like, that just bought Howie Roseman another 2 years. Like, that is a franchise reshaping level move. There's a world where that turns into getting Derek Stingley and Devonta Smith, or, you know what I'm saying, like an elite level talent plus Devonta Smith for Jalen Waddle. Like, whoa. You got a guy like Avonte Maddox playing great. Some guys on defense like Josh Sweat starting to come on a little more lately. The Eagles have a roster in place. They have a coach that's doing some fun stuff. And a quarterback that... Let's talk about Jalen Hurts. What he is to me at this point in time. I think he is an excellent bridge quarterback for this Eagles team. And he's gotten better and better and better week to week to week. And it's gone from, I thought he was a day 3 prospect, to, okay, he's a little better than that, but he's not a starter. And then it went from, he's backup that people are selling off as a starter, whatever, to like, okay, he might be a starter, to now like, yeah, he's a starting caliber quarterback. So he has just checked every box along the road, just perpetually proving my stance on Jalen Hurts wrong and wrong and wrong again. But I do still think when you watch his tape, there's still a lot of like holes in his game that he's going to have to continue checking those boxes. I think he is the absolute definition of a first-rate quarterback. Like he just is. Like he is going to see if that first read is open. Just like I said on draft night, it helps now that Devonta Smith is that first read. Absolutely. But if it's not there, he's going to run. And he can run. But a lot of times that's going to leave him short of the sticks and result in punts and stuff. But if he can develop that part of the game, And if he can be even better as an improviser and take really good care of the football and create plays out of structure, those are two areas that if those start to show up in his game, which I don't think to this point in time they have, if they do though, and he continues to check those boxes, he could continue to develop. But let's just say he stays where he's at right now. I don't think the Eagles have to draft a quarterback in the first round, but if they do, you can go with maybe a Malik Willis or a Carson Strong or whoever it may be. Again, my draft takes are not ready to go, not even close. But maybe you take a guy and you sit him behind Jalen Hurts for a couple years where they can sit and learn, and Jalen Hurts keeps things afloat, and you continue to build young talent. And then maybe when Jalen Hurts' rookie contract is done in 2 years, you let him go to a team like 2019 Carolina or 2020 Denver where like Teddy Bridgewater went. But the Eagles just have they kind of have a future building here. And Eagles fans are always going to be impatient, but they're to me just establishing a very interesting future with these draft picks, with Hurts and his kind of physical upside, but how much room he still has to grow as a quarterback. It's fascinating, and I'm excited to see it play out with Howie Roseman. And this was a huge kind of cornerstone moment for them to go into Denver and really beat the snot out of him. And Nick Sirianni is interesting. Like, young coach, what does he look like in a year or two? This was you have my attention, Philadelphia type of moment. And that's it. Those are the games I want to talk about. Every other game, I just didn't walk away with these big sweeping conclusions, or I didn't walk away with anything that I didn't already address on the power rankings. So my apologies to fans of teams of the other games that I'm not getting into those, but I do want to get into the Patreon mailbag. We have about 20 questions here, so show is only about halfway through here, but some great questions this week. And I want to remind you that if you want to ask questions for the show, these questions literally just carry the show. I'm so lucky to have not just patrons that support this channel, but patrons that provide great content and great questions. If you want to be a part of that, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy and sign up. You'll get access to submit questions here. Just sneak into those DMs and lead with mailbag question so that I know that you're trying to address me with a mailbag here. Okay. From Tyler, what are your most hated NFL media narratives? Something that came to my mind on a stream today was the idea that the NFL is rigged, or that certain teams get all the calls. I think you kind of bunch those into the same narrative. I think it's what goes around comes around. Certain teams maybe have spotlights in more opportunistic situations. But this idea that, the Patriots, they always get all the calls. The Packers, they always get all the calls. There's a couple teams that people always say that about. It's it's just not true. You watch every Patriots game, you watch every Packers game, the Cowboys, there's certain teams that people say just get all the calls. You watch every game, those teams get screwed by the refs just as much as anybody else. So that's a narrative that I think is just vindictive and stupid. And this idea that games are rigged, games aren't rigged. Refs make bad calls. It sucks. I think the state of refereeing with roughing the passer and a lot of stuff is worse than it ever has. There is no eye in the sky phoning in roughing the passer calls so that certain teams win games. It's just not happening. There's no script that Matthew Stafford's going to chuck a ball into double coverage so that the Niners can, have a comeback win on Monday Night Football. That's just, I think, such BS when people say stuff like that. Okay, from John LaDuca. If you draft or trade a quarterback that isn't a scheme fit for the offseason, would you change the scheme to adapt to that quarterback? Yes. I think that has shown around the league that, there's no better examples than Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I think Justin Fields is a case study for this. It's every young quarterback. Jalen Hurts. It's every young quarterback in the league. This idea that you have to draft a pro-style offense and he's got to mold into your scheme, it's just so outdated now. You have to adapt your scheme to best develop a young quarterback. That's, I think, assuming you go with the guy that has the upside, the traits that needs to come along. I do think there are still examples. I think Mac Jones, a great example. Mac Jones plugged so flawlessly into Josh McDaniels' system. There's no doubt about that. That was perhaps drafting a guy to play in your scheme. Now, if you're signing a guy, it might be a little bit different. If you're going to sign a veteran free agent who you kind of know who he is, target the guy whose skill set fits your scheme. But yeah, if you're drafting a young quarterback with physical traits that's kind of one-dimensional, meld your scheme to fit what they do well. Absolutely. All right. From Josh, how many QBs do you think have a good shot at winning the Super Bowl if you put them on the Bucs instead of Brady? A lot. Let me pull up my... Now, I'm not saying they're better or as good than they are with Brady, but a shot at the Super Bowl, I'm just pulling up my QB tiers. So everyone in my top tier, yes, that's 6. Everyone in tier 2, yes, that's now 11. Now into tier 3, I think Derek Carr is a shot at a Super Bowl. I think Ryan Tannehill is a shot at a Super Bowl. I think Matt Ryan probably has a shot at a Super Bowl. I think Mac Jones has a shot at a Super Bowl. He was actually at tier 4 when I tweeted this. I would move Mac Jones up. Then you got Baker and Kirk. I think you'd say Kirk, yes. Baker, I'm going to say no at this point in time. Trevor Lawrence is in there. Probably not. And that's probably it. So what did I have there? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 quarterbacks, I think, have a very good shot at winning a Super Bowl on the Bucs. With that O-line, with those receivers, with that defense. Good question, though. From Jack, do the Bears need to fire Nagy after this year? Yeah, Nagy's done. It's just done. It goes back to the scheme thing. He's not adapting his scheme to Justin Fields. Maybe he does it a little more moving forward, but I just don't know how you move forward with Nagy. He's now given up play calling duties twice. He had one great year as a coach, and it was Vic Fangio's defense carrying the team. I don't know. I just don't think Nagy is a NFL head coach caliber guy, and I think the Bears recognize that. I think they know firing him mid-season doesn't do anything for them, so they're keeping him around. He's not a bad culture guy, but yeah, I think he's done. I really do. And the Bears' schedule coming up is really tough, by the way. I think the Bears are going to be eliminated from the playoffs in a few weeks, and maybe we do see that happen. From Adam, hey Marcus, just wondering your opinion on Mike Zimmer. Does he get fired and move to being a defensive coordinator? Would he do well working with the Niners? Did you watch the Strong Opinion Sports interview last week? I'm just curious because we literally said, we were talking about Mike Zimmer and said, yeah, he has a good chance of getting fired. And then I was the one that suggested that he goes and works with Shanahan. And that would be a dream pairing. I mean, that would elevate Shanahan. It would elevate Zimmer. Shanahan's an offensive guy, so Zimmer could just handle the defense in the same way that Robert Saleh did. I love it. I think that there is a good chance. I think if the Vikings miss the playoffs in a world where 9 wins gets them a wild card, if they miss the playoffs, I do think the Vikings move on from Zimmer. And assuming he is comfortable not running the entire show, I think, yes, he goes and is a defensive mind somewhere and would be damn good at it. I think if he gets to just focus on defense, it could be like what we're seeing with Dan Quinn in Dallas on a higher degree, similar to what we saw with Vic Fangio in Denver. Like, you put an elite defensive mind in a situation where all he has to worry about is film study and putting his players in the best position to succeed. Yeah, could be real nice. Also, a short follow-up to my super chat last week. You chose Draft Day as your favorite football movie. Just wondering if you were in that situation, would you have taken Bo Callahan? Awesome show, bro. No, I probably wouldn't have played that the same way. I probably would have taken Bo Callahan. I don't know. I mean, it's a fictional world. I don't know how good Bo Callahan actually was, you know. Who knows? Maybe in that world, Bo Callahan went on and was awesome for the Seahawks. From Nicholas, I see the stats for Matthew Judon. See he's been awesome, but nobody talks about him. Is he as good as the stats are showing, or is it something else? Oh, Matthew Judon is awesome. Spectacular free agent signing. Such a great scheme fit. I don't know why more people don't talk about him. Probably because he's not a traitsy guy. He's not a guy that projects as like a 20 sack player every year. I know he's on a great rate. Belichick's defense have always been, relying on guys being role players and doing their job. But Judon as that do-it-all edge hybrid piece has been lights out. Can push the pocket. Like the Patriots' pass rush is better than it's been in a long, long time. Barmore, Judon, huge parts of that. But his role in run defense is elite. He has flexibility to drop into coverage. Absolutely, I would love to give Matt Judon a little bit more respect because that Patriots defense has been, let's just say, top 10 this year. And Matt Judon has been a significant reason for their success. From Greg Grom, do you think that it's an ambidextrous quarterback would pose new challenges for defenses than a QB with just one dominant hand? Oh, man. I don't think so. It's an interesting question. I just don't see it changing that much. I think these quarterbacks right now they're so good at throwing whether they're going left or right. I don't know how much that really changes, to be completely honest. So I'm going to say no, that be an ambidextrous quarterback. Now, if he was, but like, what's the advantage, I don't think on the same level as far as the X's and O's side of it, but I don't understand like what advantage you would have to be like, play one, he's dropping back with his right hand. Play two, he's dropping back with his left hand. I don't know how much that changes, to be completely honest. Anything. From Devontae, if at the beginning of the season you were told the Rams would acquire Von Miller and Odell, how much draft capital would you have thought it would cost? I think Von Miller is exactly what I thought. That was the exact compensation I actually said on this podcast for the trade show. Odell, I would have thought it cost probably a second-round pick to get him. Okay, from Grim, are the Eagles looking good these past few weeks? Sign that they are progressing. We actually just dove into the Eagles. Should the Eagles address QB in the draft or fill other holes instead? I will repeat that I do think if you like a Carson Strong or you like a Malik Willis, I think, why not? You got all these first-round picks. You already stole one for Devonta Smith. Like, if you spend it on a quarterback and it completely backfires, if he's out of the league in a year for some reason, you're still walking out pretty. Because you got that pick basically for free. If you just stayed put and took Devonta Smith at 6, you're still in the green. So to take that pick, that's probably going to be a top 10, a top 12 pick. If you like a high upside quarterback, put him next to Hurts, let him learn and sit. It'll push Jalen Hurts even more, and maybe Jalen Hurts continues to check those boxes. I don't think it could hurt to spend one of those picks on a quarterback. I think it'd be smart. And I think they probably will. And it doesn't have to mean that Hurts is done. You know, they can go to Hurts and say, you're still our starter. You have every opportunity to continue to prove things right. Not to mention, if Hurts hits, you spend a second-round pick on him. So that's another like free house money situation. You could probably trade the guy you drafted for another good pick a year or two later. From Finn, with Kevin King playing like an okay corner, who is the worst starting corner in the NFL? That's a good question. Worst starting corner in the NFL. Richard Sherman's been real bad. That's hard. I'm running through everything in my head right now. Trying to think of like who the worst pass defenses are. Well, you got like the Lions have some really bad corners, especially the kid out of Arkansas who hasn't been very good. Like it's impressive that he's playing, but no team has a starting corner that's just. I'm trying to think of his name. Jerry Jacobs might be. Brandon Echols is a interesting rookie for the Jets, but he's not very good at this point in time. He's very fast. I'm thinking of like young guys that are playing that probably shouldn't be playing, but their teams are so bad that they're like, why not let them develop? So like Echols, Jerry Jacobs might be the best answers there. Desmond King as a perimeter player for Houston's been real bad. There's a couple answers there. From Luke, why has Terrace Marshall struggled so much? Did the draft community give him too much credit at LSU, or will he eventually adjust to the NFL? I was certainly not as high on Terrace Marshall, so I guess I'm not surprised. I like his physical upside, but he was just so incredibly raw. He was buried on the depth chart as a sophomore, and then his junior year, he just wasn't utilized. Like, they had such a bad team, he didn't even finish the whole season. I didn't love his routes. I just didn't love the consistency from him. So I think he's just incredibly young. And to have expected him to just be this big impact, I certainly wasn't projecting that. So I guess it's all the reasons I thought. Like, he's just young and raw. He's not a great route runner. He's not overly physical. He needs to develop. But yeah, I do think there were a lot of people that gave him lofty expectations that he couldn't cash. From Matthew Lloyd, if you could change the narrative on one active player's career, who would it be? And why? Example, the narrative on Kirk Cousins is that he doesn't show up in primetime games. Great question. I want to come up with a good answer. I would change the narrative that Phillip Rivers what even is the narrative I would change? Phillip Rivers is the one player that I always kind of think deserved more respect. I guess just the narrative that Phillip Rivers wasn't a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl. I think that's BS. He was so remarkably consistent. His anticipation and ability to read coverages, and it did lead to some picks for sure, but I don't know, man. I think Phillip Rivers had some really incredible seasons. He never won an MVP. He never won a Super Bowl. I think he's the player that that I would change the narrative on, because he never really got the respect he deserved. From Ash, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Lions coaching staff. Despite the obvious 0-8-1 start, do you think there's potential there for the likes of Campbell and Aaron Glenn? Barring in mind how bad of a roster they've had to work with, absolutely. It feels like a lot of people aren't acknowledging just like the severe lack of talent on this roster. They've got UDFA's no-name starting at corner, wide receiver, not to mention Jared Goff is the QB. Love from the UK, love from the US, Ash. Yeah, Dan Campbell 100% like needs to be back next year. You're right. The Lions roster is the worst in the NFL. I think even maybe Texans included. Like, seriously. The Texans are just playing old veterans, but they're better players than the Lions have. It's been brutal, man. And one of their only good players is done for the year. Their center, Frank Ragnow. And at critical positions, they have no talent. Edge, wide receiver, corner, quarterback, 100%, man. I think Dan Campbell's done a good job to get that, team to fight. I love Aaron Glenn as a defensive mind, and the Lions defense has even had some moments this year. I think Aaron Glenn has great potential as a defensive mind. It is hard for defensive minds to be like viewed as head coach candidates and all that stuff. It just doesn't happen as much, but Dan Campbell, I think, is in that Ron Rivera, even like John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, like breadth of potential, like just CEO leaders of a team. And I think he could get to that level of notoriety of like Harbaugh and Tomlin. He's a long, long way to go, but I've been impressed by his coaching style and ability. But yeah, it's the roster talent in Detroit is miserable, 100%. And that's a great excuse for why they're not winning games. It's not a lack of coaching. Definitely not. From Bill Jones, who are your top 5 young receivers? So let's say 25 and under. I think Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, got to be 1 and 2 right now. And I'm going off the top of my head, so apologies if I forget anyone. You got to put Jamar Chase in there. Just trying to run through in my mind all the teams. NFC South. Ridley's over 25. Man, DJ Moore. Is DJ Moore top 5? We'll put him on the back burner there. He might crack it. NFC West, Metcalf. Ooh, Metcalf. I think I'd put Metcalf over DJ Moore. Rams, no. Cardinals, no. Niners, no. Ooh, Debo. Ooh, Debo. How old is Debo? Because Chase, Jefferson, and CD are easy. Debo is 25 on the dot, so we said under 25. AFC West, you've got... I wouldn't put Jerry Jeudy in there as much as I like him. So no. AFC South... AJ Brown. AJ Brown is 4. Or just in no particular order. AJ Brown's 100% in there. And then Texans, no. Colts, no. Jags, no. Titans, got Brown. AFC North, we got Jamar Chase. No. And then AFC East, no. Waddle, top 10, but not top 5. So you're between DJ Moore... Debo, we said was too old. I guess DJ Moore is probably still under 25. Yep, 24. So Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and DJ Moore. There's my 5. From Connor, Max Crosby has 63 pressures this year. Nobody else has more than 50. Why isn't he in the Defensive Player of the Year talk? Seems like we're massively overrating guys like Watt and Garrett comparatively. Statistically speaking, yeah, Crosby should be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. 100%. I think we all know the reasons why. Like Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett. Max Crosby is Max Crosby. It's just sometimes it just is the way it is sometimes, but you're right. I mean, numbers wise, Max Crosby's been that guy. I think you can nitpick Crosby a little bit and say, okay, the tackles he's going against, he's had a pretty big run of like not great, very, very great tackles. Whereas Myles Garrett's getting double teamed a lot more. Myles Garrett's wins just look more impressive than Max Crosby a lot of the times. But yeah, Crosby should be in the top 3-ish of Defensive Player of the Year conversations. I think you are spot on that. It also would help if people took the Raiders' defense a little more seriously. From Alex, when someone says he's a Mike linebacker, can you explain that to me in simple terms, please? So Mike means you are the middle linebacker. And typically, whether you're a 3-4 defense or a 4-3 defense, the Mike linebacker is going to be your smartest linebacker, your most physical linebacker, and or your biggest linebacker. The Mike, more often than not, wears the green dot, which means he's the guy that gets the call from the defensive coordinator. He has to call the play and make sure everybody's in the right place. He's the field general of the defense. But it varies a little bit by team. There's some teams that actually the safety wears the green dot. Sometimes the actual middle linebacker just isn't a good enough player that he's on the field all the time. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Sometimes that Mike might come off the field. If it's nickel defense, if he's a 245-pound guy that can't cover, well, nowadays he's coming off the field like 60% of the time. So he's not going to be the guy with the green dot. But schematically speaking, the Mike is the middle of the linebackers, the middlemost off-ball linebacker. That's the guy that you got to work up to on double teams, and you got to call out depending if he's blitzing or not. So that I hope explains to you. You can let me know. Shoot me a message if that didn't explain it well enough, or if you have other questions. I'd love to get into it with you, Alex. All right, 2 more questions. One from Sandro. Oh boy, a lot of options here. Who would you rather have for the next 5 years? Not just from a on-the-field play perspective, but also factoring in age, injury history, and personality. And then he has a bunch of options here. So Tyreek Hill or Jamar Chase? Jamar Chase. Tyreek Hill's like 29. Aaron Donald or Myles Garrett? Myles Garrett because of age. TJ Watt or Myles Garrett? Myles Garrett because he's a better player. Ed Oliver or Christian Barmore? Christian Barmore. I think he's got more power and a higher upside. Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen? Give me Patrick Mahomes. That's pretty easy. Josh Allen or Brian Burns? Ooh, that's tough. Brian Burns. Only reason I hesitated is because Josh Allen is so versatile, and his pass rushing skill set's only getting better, and he actually has a little more power to his game. But you got to go Brian Burns. He's just been more productive, and he's a little more explosive. DK Metcalf or A.J. Brown? A.J. Brown can do a little bit more than Metcalf, but that's close. I also have some slight hesitations with Metcalf's personality and injury history would probably hold me back ahead of A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase? I guess Jamar Chase, but it's close. I think Chase has slightly better ball skills and route running ability. Kevin Byard or Jesse Bates? I will go Byard hesitantly. As much as I love Jesse Bates. J.C. Jackson or Trayvon Diggs? No doubt J.C. Jackson. That's the easiest one on the list so far. Kyler Murray or Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes. Kyler Murray or Josh Allen? Oh, that one gets really tough because I am a sucker for Kyler Murray and his game. I feel better about Kyler Murray's future. I'm sorry, Bills fans. I think he's more accurate. I think he's a better decision maker. I think he's better at reading defenses. He is comparable as far as his ability to extend plays, but he's just different. I just wish he was fully healthy all the time. It's not an easy answer, but I'm going to go Kyler. Christian McCaffrey or Kamara? I am going to go Kamara. I've always just had a preference towards Kamara over Christian McCaffrey. I think he's tougher. I think he's a better runner of the football ever so slightly. And I think he has more of that infectious energy that I like from a running back. I think he can kind of, like I said, ignite a team a little more. I love McCaffrey too, but I just trust Kamara a little bit more. Lamb or Judy is Lamb. That one's pretty easy. But that's fun. You can always send me those. I think that's great content. Thank you, Sandro. Last question here from Jacob. What three young receiver, a lot of young receiver questions. What three young receivers would you choose to start a team? Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, Debo, Michael Pittman, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I would go, because of like skill set here, I want DK Metcalf as my burning deep threat. I think CeeDee Lamb as my do-it-all receiver. Or Justin Jefferson. Do I want Lamb or Jefferson? I'm going to roll the dice on CeeDee Lamb because I think he's got a little bit more juice than Jefferson. Even if Jefferson right now gets the nod, I'm going to roll the dice with CeeDee Lamb as my X. And then I think I want Jamar Chase because of his run after catch ability. I think he can play from the slot. So I'm rolling the dice a little bit on like Jamar Chase and CeeDee over guys like A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson. But it's close. If you just went A.J. Brown, Metcalf, and Justin Jefferson, you're in pretty damn good shape too. But I feel very good about I want DK Metcalf because I think he gives you something none of these other guys can do, and you're getting the option to put those guys in. The only guy that I didn't even think about there was Michael Pittman. I thought about Devontae Smith and his route running ability. I thought about Debo and his rack ability. But Michael Pittman just, I didn't even consider because he's just not the separator that any of those guys are. Okay, that is the podcast. Really hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening. I appreciate all of my patrons for your great mailbag questions. Really made this show go. And I appreciate anybody that wants to go check out Patreon. Get some exclusive content and submit your mailbag questions via DM to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. This was the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you for Studs and Duds next, either Thursday night or Friday. Hopefully, we'll see. But until then, peace out.